Okay, Jay, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So before we get started, point of clarification here. The only way Jay can hear us is if you speak into your mic, so be sure to, whenever you say anything, to use your microphones. Okay, great, thank you.
Are we still under the old system where only so many of us can speak at a time? Okay, so we gotta turn it off when we're through.
Right, please, thank you, okay.
Okay, you're back.
Okay. I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is a roll call. Commissioner Rickard. Here. Commissioner Beasy.
Here?
Commissioner Molitor.
Here.
Commissioner Wu.
Here.
And Chairman Ankney's here, so we are all present and accounted for. We do have a quorum. First order of business is approval of the meeting agenda. I've looked at it. It looks like it's pretty well laid out. So I will accept, if anybody doesn't have any questions about it, I'll entertain a motion. So do I have a second?
I'll make the motion. I'll second it.
Okay. Bill, will you second it? Okay, perfect. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Approved by everyone, unanimous. Next order of business is our approval of our meeting minutes from November 30th. I looked them over. They look to be pretty accurate to me. Does anybody have anything they noticed?
I had one.
Turn your mic on, please.
I had one. Number 7 on the second page. Recent water situation. Should probably be a C instead of an S.
That's a good catch. Anything else?
No?
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, with
No,
that,
I saw that too. Correct.
okay, with the, that minor edit, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Motion carries. Perfect. Okay, let me get to my agenda. Okay, we're to agenda item number 5, action items, and it looks like we have a consultant presentation.
In order for Jay to hear you, you have to speak into that mic. You'll
Yep.
have to turn it on the side there. And then I'll just bring up your slides and you can tell me what it is.
Okay. So if you'll please introduce yourself and spell your name for us.
I will do.
Thank you.
Jay, can you hear me okay? Make sure I'm speaking to the mic.
Yes, I can hear you fine. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commission. My name is Ken Van Voorst. I'm with SPVB Landscape Architects. We had the pleasure of helping or assisting your community last summer through a park planning process that we want to kind of give the results of what was produced and the process we went through, and with the goal at the end of, hopefully you're taking a look at it and had a chance to review it and say, yep, we like it, and let Christina take it and run from there. So, in short, last May, about 2020, we had a first planning commission meeting. I don't know if you all remember that, but I was here.
Did I lose you? I can't hear anybody.
I'm not sure your mic's on. Nope, it should be.
How's that?
Is that, there we go, that sounds better. Now I can hear myself. Jay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank
Okay,
you.
sorry about that, that was my mistake. So I was just summarizing, I think you have the slide in front of you that says phases 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or a final. I was just going over that. So I'll continue. In May of 2022, we met with the commission, talked about what we were going to do through the course of the summer, included the planning process. And then in about June of that following June, we had our first public kickoff meeting where we presented some information and gathered data from at the market. And then in the next month, phase 3, in about July, we presented a plan, kind of a conceptual plan, got some feedback from a number of people at the park. Christine and I also met and talked about different options that were available, which we then refined into phase 4, where we moved some parts and pieces around, took the feedback that we had, adjusted. If I recall, that was about the time the fields kind of became a little more loose and a little more multifunctional rather than something so focused. Which brings us to Labor Day, where it was presented at the city's, what do you call your days? I apologize. Old Mill Days. The final plan is presented there. Again, more feedback was brought in from the broader general public. Christina shared that with me. We updated the site plan with a little bit more detail, if you will, to where we presented a plan that I believe in the last few months you guys had some comments and some information with Christina shared with me again, as well as the mayor, and we updated the site plan. If you want to go to the next slide. In quick, Jay, if you've got the slide, it shows the bar graphs. These are the voting of the population in all about this process that talked about the different elements that would be included in the park. I won't go through each and every one of those, but you can see the bar graph, how things played out. So I think it's pretty well stated that the playground was one of the key pieces that everybody really wanted to have. And then followed by the picnic shelter and splash pad and so forth. The next one I think is this, yeah. So then we asked people how many times they visited the park, and obviously people came more than 10 times a year, so we're making the assumption those are more local people visiting the park, and I think that's a good telling information about who we were gathering the information from. And the next one, maybe.
I might have skipped one.
That's okay.
I'll return here.
That's all right.
No, that's it.
That's it. And then if you want to pull up the park plan, please. Any questions with kind of the process and how we got to where we are today? Well, I have you know, that stuff that's not so exciting, in my opinion, we'll just say.
I thought the three different opportunities, I guess 4 counting Millwood days, and the way the questionnaires, you and Christina put it together, did a pretty good job, I thought, of addressing all of the issues of the people that were there. So, yeah, I thought that worked out really well.
Yeah, and I think, just a side note, having the commissioners there, I know all of you weren't able to attend, but having the commissioners there on the few occasions, it was very beneficial, and I hope those that attended could really get a feel for what people were telling them and how we were gathering the information. So I thank you for the commissioners that did that and had the time to be able to do that. So what you have in front of you is an updated park plan, and since the presentation, the final presentation in September, right? We have also received a survey of a topographical survey and a boundary survey from the Welchcomer Engineering. We didn't have that early on, and obviously it would have been nice to have that base information, but now we have more strategic information, or actual information, I should say. So we refitted the pieces and parts of the puzzle, so this may look slightly different than the presentation board that we had before, but we literally just received this about a month ago, maybe, I think. So we squished and pulled and pushed, but all the park elements are still there. We rearranged, I'll just go through it real quickly, per the request of the mayor and some other input about the courts. I understand you had a presentation regarding some pickleball courts, so we modified that to show a little more variety with pickleball, basketball, and tennis to give that variety. Now, I do want to state that this is really an overall park plan. I don't really want to call it a master plan, because a master plan delves into cost recovery and a number of things it can. This one is really just about spatial planning and what potential this park could have. So it doesn't mean that because we show the basketball court arrangement and the pickleball and so forth in that particular configuration, doesn't mean that will be built, but it gives us a general idea and a direction to go when you start thinking about that. So I want to preface that with the commissioners as a whole. This is a really good snapshot of what we'd like to see in 2023 and beyond, but it can move around and will most likely move around. I want to state that clearly. This is definitely a living document. It will move as time goes on. But with that said, we focused a central plaza space with a Christmas tree. That was one of the goals, to have this central gathering area to where people could use this seasonal, both in the winter, spring, summer, and obviously at the holiday season. So that festivity focal point is kind of a key element to the center part of the park. We located the playground and the splash pad element against kind of central to the park is the playground, but then the splash pad is to the upper left because of the restroom and its proximity to that location. We included a few more picnic shelters. We included a walking path that has a little more curvilinear exercise instead of a straight lineal path that rounds the open field area. Again, as I mentioned, about midway through summer, it was very apparent that we wanted to have these fields that were open and multifunctional. We also recognized how much the market could expand, the farmers market, so we indicated the little boxes. Those represent about a 10 by 10 tent area with a little bit of an offset. But as you can see in there, if you look closely, they're grayed back, but you will see that there's quite a bit of space to facilitate an expanded market if that's the desire. We separated the market from the central splash pad area and really the core with some open space, because there was some conflicts with the tennis court and miscellaneous things kind of being congested all in one location.
Can you say that last part again?
So the tennis court today is in the middle, and the market, the farmer's market feeds around it. There's some congestion that happens associated with that. We try to give some separation with that in the future so that we don't have that congestion between uses. The good thing, by flipping the court over to the west side, it really helps separate that. The other thing that we recognized, obviously, is the Millwood, the trail to the north and the access points to that. Right now, you really don't have a hardscape surface to get you there through the park. It's very limited. So we have 3 locations in the future that park users could access and use the park. And I say this, it works both ways. Trail users get to use your park and vice versa. So it gives us true access. The biggest deficiency that your park has today is it's ADA compliant. It is not. There's only one access into the park, and it's limited. It terminates in a big grass area. So if somebody needed to go use the restroom, there is no direct route that truly is ADA compliant. So that and the playground are probably the biggest reasons that we're having this conversation. Those few elements really are parts and pieces that if I was making a suggestion and the commission was looking at where do we prioritize, I would think about that. The pathway system, meeting ADA compliance, and bringing those other parts and pieces up to, because you're at risk. The pool is a big piece of that. That's a really big challenge, and I think Christine and I had a number of conversations, but your risk managers really need to be engaged in some of those activities. So with that said, we want to have a conversation about what those elements are. This stuff is very diagrammatic. The details aren't defined yet. I do believe at this point, now that we've positioned it and laid it over the survey, we have a better opportunity to understand what cost values might be. We have not run a probable cost of construction, mostly because we want to know a little bit more on the detail side of it. That's kind of the next phase, really, is kind of figure out budgeting and how do we implement the park elements that have been presented. And quite honestly, they were brought forth from the population and the users. So I think that survey and all that information that was predecessor to this really is telling you that this is a public space and this is what they want to have, would like to have. There's some parking, you can't quite see it to the right. We included additional parking. That was a big ticket item. Does it pop up in there? Did we cut it off? Christine, I think we may have slightly cut it off. Oh, there it goes. Yeah. We increased the size of that parking a little bit next to the water tower. It kind of rolls out into the lawn area. As I said before, as we were working before, it was a little bit broader in height than it is in width. It's a lot longer piece of property and so forth. So anyway, with that said, that was one of the pieces that people said we want more parking, and we addressed that by allowing that. We also gave access to the trail on that west side, or the east side, excuse me. There's, if you don't mind, Christine, go to the left real quick. I just want to point out, the little jog in all the courts is to recognize that there's an existing well, and we were also trying to recognize the existing trees. So most of the trees that are around the centerpiece and over to the court side are the ones that you have. The additional new trees recommended along the walking path would be all new plantings. Right now, it's pretty wide open out there. Any questions? I could get into all kinds of detail, but what are the biggest questions, and how can I assist you folks?
I have a few. Any additional lighting?
That was one of the things that came out, was additional lighting. At this scale, we can't really figure out exactly what that is, and so the next, not for us, but in the future, the question that you all need to recognize is how much and what light levels do we want to have? So to answer your question short, yes, there should be additional lighting. The question is how much? So there's a whole process to go through that and determine it. You already have some on the trail, right? And so now integrating that into the park is really important. The key areas are the main plaza spaces in those big heavily used spaces, but how much do you want to light it up? It is, got neighbors on all sides, well, not all sides, but the south side. So understanding that is really important. Lighting up the courts, we'll just say, for nighttime use or extended time, that really has an impact on those because it's a different animal. So my suggestion is, yes, there should be and will be additional lighting when you plan this to the next level. How much is really a question for you folks and to ask.
Well, I can relate to the tennis court lighting because the way it's posted when you drive down Willow at night,
Right.
it's blinding.
It does, it can.
So-
If you're trying to light it up to play tennis, it can be very bright.
So second question I have is, in the northeast corner, you have restrooms and storage there, little building.
Yeah,
And I
so,
believe in our conversations we've had prior, that becomes an issue because our public water drinking source is next door. So what plans do we have for that?
That building actually prior to yesterday was elsewhere located, and the mayor asked to have it moved where it is. So that will be something that we will have to consider. But for the sake of tonight's discussion, I just had him move it.
Okay, no problem. I mean,
And-
there may, so,
Yeah.
my background is very heavy construction.
sure.
Okay, so, because there may be issues with that being so close to the public water source, and so there may be additional piping requirements and
Yeah.
additional things to protect. We just went through a terrible thing with our.
I heard that.
water.
I saw some pictures. That location, there is a sewer easement that goes through that diagonal dash line is a sewer line easement. I don't know if there's a line in there, quite honestly. If it's connected to a sewer system, the proximity to the tower, it's probably better off being a well. I mean, this is not going to be a drain field. It's going to be connected to something. So I would feel comfortable it's probably in that general proximity. We were asked to move it out of that easement because of the concern over what that is. Again, don't know what's in that particular spot. So,
Any questions from Mr. Rickard, Commissioner Rickard? Commissioner Weepeasy?
Could we change the lighting so I can see that corner?
Oh, what,
It's
down?
just-
Sorry.
Yeah, that helps.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Ah.
This front area where it's all brown, this big plaza area,
Mhm.
is that like proportionate to the rest of the park? Because it's huge space, so is that all just concrete?
Well, the idea here is that we've got some grade changes, some elevation changes.
Yep.
In fact, there's the lines represent stairways, so it's actually more of a formal grand kind of staircase that goes down. So the actual flat areas are probably not as big as it looks because of making the stairs getting down to the
Yeah.
lower level. But yeah, it could be colored concrete, it could be pavers. The actual determination of that specific material isn't picked at this moment in time. We did throw out some options to people to ask them what their preferences were. I can't say as we ever came up with a true thou shalt have this, but to your point, it is a hardscaped area. The idea is that at some point during the course of this park, you might have outdoor presentations, and the idea is people could be on the plaza talking to the bigger group standing in the park, or vice versa. Those stairs could be used for the theater when you have your outdoor theater. It's a mobile back screen. They're set up, people can sit on the stairs and they're elevated in a theater fashion.
pretty
So that's why it has the size that it is. And then the tree in the middle is acting as that center focal point for the festive, the Christmas tree season, we'll just say.
This is the best layout I've seen so far. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun.
Does it satisfy the polo fields requirements? Or not polo fields, but what's the
Lacrosse.
sport? Lacrosse they've been playing out there, the size? It doesn't? We're not too worried about that?
No, that was a decision that was made, that we weren't going to maintain that anymore.
This looks great.
Yeah, I like it.
And I can't speak for a lacrosse team, but like everything, soccer, they tend to adapt to the shape and space they have. So does it limit somebody from not doing that? No, by
Yeah.
no means.
That makes sense.
Is it official sanctioned? That's a question, right?
I was just gonna add a quick comment on that lacrosse side. What's the reservoir on the South Hill there by Rockwood Reservoir?
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with that space or not, but that was an area where, when I was coaching my daughter's soccer team, we would practice there. On that little area
Up top?
very steep, downhill. On the top, there were 2 soccer teams and 6 lacrosse teams practicing it. So
In the same piece of ground.
Yeah, so which made it, I will say, lacrosse and soccer are not sports that cross over very well. Balls went into each field and balls went down the hill.
Down the hill.
But to Ken's point, the youth sports will adapt to the space that's available. Yeah, so.
Yep. And we've taken projects like this and literally shown all kinds of field arrangements just so you can see, but you would be surprised how many youth sport fields you could probably get into that space, and elsewhere as well. So it just depends on the level of youth you're trying to satisfy.
Commissioner Beasy?
I'm wondering where the Christmas tree came from. I don't remember any of our surveys mentioning it, or it just kind of popped up there. And I've heard a lot of people in the community say, well, to put it nicely, that it's kind of a ridiculous idea to put a major Christmas tree in the park, because who uses the park in the wintertime, and who drives by the park in the wintertime?
It's cool to have it on Argonne, but if that's not going to be an option in the future, I think it's awesome to have it in the park.
There are other trees on Argonne, too.
Well,
who's going to see it?
I'm
in the
back.
park?
I don't know what happened. It just went dead and I had to reconnect. Sorry about that.
Well, we voted and you're buying lunch, Jay.
I thought he was buying the park.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Well, I remember talking about the Christmas tree in the park. I don't remember selecting a location, because I remember asking the question, we're losing our Christmas tree on Argonne?
Yeah.
So,
Why not have 2 Christmas trees?
yeah, and I think it's important to have, personally speaking, I think it's important to have in the park just because of community pride. Whether people drive by it or not,
see it,
we
good.
know that it's there. Commissioner Molitor, any questions?
The only well, first of all, thank you for sending me that rendering. That made it really easy to see what you were talking about. I see that there are 4 different picnic shelters. Are those covered, or is that just what could be? Are we going to actually have 4, or is that just a possibility?
So you have 2 today, the 2 on the south side of the rendering, one on the east side of the plaza, one on the west side of the plaza, are existing. Those are the locations that they're at. One of them is not in as good a shape as the other one, so the assumption is that we would keep it in its location, recondition it to match the nicer facility, shelter, with the river rock and other elements. And then the other 2 that are in the grass open space would be additional or new ones. And then the other brown piece that's over by the splash pad is the restroom.
I see the restroom.
And then there's a little
I
tiny,
just see the,
oh, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the rendering that I have. Is there's 4 different picnic shelters in addition to the restrooms and the storage area and the other restroom next to the tennis courts. I understand that this is a work in progress. I was just curious if, we're going to try and expand what we had to include 4 different picnic shelters.
Yeah, to your point, we'd add 2 more. The 2 you already have, and we'd add 2 additional on that circular walking path around the lawn area.
Okay, all right. So I think that rendering looks great, and questions have been good, and input's been wonderful. So, I think we're well on our way.
Okay. Commissioner Wu, any more questions?
Yeah, I had just one more question. So I was trying to think back to our last meeting when we had, was it Daryl? Was he the expert, the pickleball expert? Was this do you guys remember, was this like kind of setup he was talking about, having them all separate
Yes.
and then having the separate tennis court?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the response or the information I received, he didn't care for the orientation as well, and I don't disagree with him in respects to trying to play. You don't want to be looking in the sunset in the summertime, and which in most people will be in that evening, I would assume, time. So it was oriented, kind of looking. That doesn't mean the courts have to be that way, but that's how we had shown it. So now we've straightened it out a little more lineal.
Yeah, this is the direction they're going now, right?
Yeah.
Which I think works.
Again, I will say, just for clarity, this is kind of a big placeholder. That's probably much bigger depending on how many courts you decide to do. But it gives you an idea of what their space requirement is if you're trying to put all those in there. So the arrangement of them may change to some degree. The little notch is because of the well. I wanted to, point that out. So that kind of hinders if you were to try to do 2 tennis courts. You might have to sacrifice or flip them around, but it's just kind of an FYI. You can arrange the courts in all kinds of different configurations, but that gives you an idea of what that could be. And then once you get, like I was telling Christina, just to be all frank and honest, if your pickleball people come up and they want to sponsor and pay for them all, you guys will go, okay, let's do how many you want, let's do it. That's usually the way the conversation goes. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think once we decide on that, we need to get Daryl Knapp with Selkirk Sports if he thinks that these are going to be the nicest courts in the entire Spokane County, that they can step up. But that's another discussion.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Rickard.
At the risk of sounding redundant, I kind of missed what the end of this part about the restroom in the northwest corner or northeast corner was.
Oh, I just was curious because it's so close to our public drinking source, public water. There's code against how close sewage can be to a public drinking water system.
Yeah, and so,
I just was curious if they had considered that.
okay, and was it?
This building was actually on the other side just as of a day ago, and we just were asked to slide it into the northeast corner, and we took a wag at it, and we know the tower's there. If they're connected hardline to a system, they can be much closer. If it was going to have a drain field, then definitely it's got to be a certain distance away. But usually it's from the well, the source of it, not necessarily the tank, but that's, we got to look into
Is there not a well
that.
next to the tank there?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Is there one there? Yeah, I don't know where the exact well location is.
So,
But-
well, there should still be a question about whether that complies with the water system plan.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that'll be addressed. This is just a rendering, it's a living
Yeah,
document.
so to answer your question, if it's hardline, sewer lined, it could be a closer proximity to the tank, and I think we're still a distance away that would allow that. I have not done an offset or looked at the ecology to know exactly what that dimension is, but we could do that. But I'm pretty comfortable with the sewer easement in there, and if there's a sewer line there, that's the more advantageous location in respects to connecting to a sewer system compared to trying to put one in. But I'm pretty confident in the City of the Valley that you would not be able to put a septic tank and a drain field in anymore. You have to
Right,
connect.
No, and if just to rest assured, if it's hard piped,
Yeah.
there are best construction practices to
Yep.
make sure that it complies and is safe. So,
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Absolutely.
if there's not any more questions, we can pass the torch to Christine to see if she's got anything to add to the presentation.
Well, I don't really have anything to add other than if you are comfortable with this plan, then I would be asking for your approval to take this back to the city council to show them what we've come up with through this process. They have not been a part of this process. I've not been updating them with any renderings or anything of that nature. And then once we had their sign off on it, then I would be bringing it back to you for a public hearing.
Okay, with that in mind, no. You had your chance. Please.
I'm going to scroll down here just a little bit because maybe I'm having computer trouble here. I wanted to show you at the bottom, I had asked Ken to look for some examples in the theme that we had discussed at length at our last meeting, and so he provided these. Additionally, I received another catalog this week from a different playground equipment manufacturer, and I flagged a couple of things in it. I meant to bring it, I can grab it after the meeting, but they did have in that catalog, they had some actual tree-shaped amenities, which I thought might be nice for our Tree City. And I spoke with Ken when I met with him to discuss the changes to the sport court about that rubberized ground covering that we had talked about and the possibility of somehow using the different colors of that to reflect the river through the city. And in that catalog today, there was something similar for us to look at. So, but I did want you to see these because I do think that these examples are really fantastic and give a good idea of what it could look like.
Also, I can say on either one of those is wow. They're cool, very cool.
So the one I neglected to mention, oh, sorry.
No, as someone that used to teach preschool and stuff, those make me really uneasy. It's sort of like, well, let's play around the tracks. You know, kind of minimizing the danger of
That's
railroad crossing.
that's
That
a
one
good-
especially,
It's a good perspective.
you know.
I'm still gonna say wow.
There are definitely,
So, wow.
in today's world, the activities in the sport, in the play creation, or the imagination, if you will, is pretty much unlimited. If you can think of it, they can build different things, the manufacturers of splash pads and playground equipment in general. There always is the perception of, are we promoting something? I can give you an example. The city of Spokane wanted to do one relative to a piece of playground equipment that's relative to a tower, like a electrical tower. And Avista said, absolutely not. We don't want it just for that reason.
Right.
We don't want to teach anyone to climb towers. It's a great idea. It was really cool. But to your point, it is something we should be cognizant of. But this is something that's tried and true, and it's used in a lot of parks. So the theme that I forgot to mention was, in the whole process of our gathering information, we asked the theme, and railroad and the river were the ones that came out on top. So that theme, and that goes right along with some of the historical photos that we're able to find as well. I was telling Christine, there's a great photo of the park that has bollards on the corner, not bollards, but a river rock from the river fence, and it's just cool. And it's like, that is the kind of piece and detail that we need to integrate into it, if you ask me, because it just ties it to the river and the valley and everything that we, our environment, the natural environment. So I think that the public input was very good. It was really gave us a good insight in a direction that it feels like your community would like to go with this park. So.
I like
Go ahead.
Christina's idea. I like Christina's idea about finding something with a tree. We have a great historical tree society, whatever it is, and I think a tree that would do that, the splash pad, would be a tremendous addition, in addition to putting the river on pavers or whatever we're going to do through the middle of that. So I like that idea a lot, Christina.
Great. Okay, so if I understand, Christina, what your ask is, we need to vote on if we want to send this rendering to city
Yeah.
council.
Yeah, I
So then we
think-
can start the public hearing process.
After having started this project 10 months ago, are you comfortable now through this process with sending this drawing forward as what you are proposing for the park plan? They, of course, will get, have the final decision. And then with their approval, I would be bringing it back to you for a public hearing on it. And then we would go forward from there. I did budget money in the 2023 budget to hire a grant writer. And so we could get that person going on looking for funds to start some of this construction. But I would like to know from you all if you feel comfortable with sending this drawing forward.
Okay. Is everybody clear on what Christina's asking? Okay, do I have a motion?
Should we discuss
Can I
it?
ask a question?
Okay, how this
Can I ask
works
a
is we
question
make a
before-
motion and a second, then we discuss.
Okay,
So
sorry.
do we have a motion to approve the rendering? Do we have a motion to disapprove the rendering?
Can I ask one more question before?
Absolutely.
With this rendering as a working document, how does that work with how we do this as far as making changes going forward as we're putting things in place permanently? Does that happen after public hearing? It would?
Well, I mean, you have to adopt a plan you have to
Correct.
adopt a plan to go out for grants. You have to adopt a plan to start getting the money in order. But as Ken mentioned, it is a living document. So if through, the process, which will obviously take place over time, the construction, changes need to be made based on things like proximity to utilities or things, then yeah, I believe that would come back here and go through the process again because it is an adopted plan. If we're going to make changes to it, then we would need to do that through the public process.
Can I ask a question on that? So to the extent that you go out to bid and there's a funding deficiency, are you saying that then comes back to the planning commission?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
So,
I just meant simply from a standpoint of if we have to move amenities around or add or subtract amenities, I think that would certainly come back. But from a funding standpoint, I don't know that.
so if I may, just kind of the big broad picture, if you will. So the primary funding source most likely for this particular improvements, whether it's a part of it, the splash pad individually, tennis courts individually, or the park as a whole, is either going to be through a voter's bond or it's going to be through grant options. The state's grants for outdoor recreation, I mentioned that when we first met, is the Recreation and Conservation Office. They're the clearinghouse for the federal money to go through, whether it's pathways for walking or whether it's outdoor recreation. So to compete in that, it's a very competitive grant program. To compete, you have to have shown that there's a public process, a public need, and that the park, the improvement that you're asking for has been vetted and you have a plan in place. It doesn't have to be down to the nitty-gritty detail of the exact location. It's just the generality and the general ideas that that's what you're doing. Because when you're going for a grant, you might be competing against, it may only fund partially, and that's where the conversation about your pickleball people, that if they come in and say, we love it, we'll sponsor 4 pickleball courts, you then take that value and you put it against the other recreational activities. So now you got 50,000 here and you're going to chase another 50,000 to do the amenities associated or around that. So these things build like a snowball. But to get those grants and to be competitive, you have got to have gone through a process, and all the jurisdictional bodies, you guys, the city council, have got to, if you want to be competitive, approve that process. In other words, you make the recommendation, the council says, yep, we recommend all the things that Christina and the group, and this is how we got to it. that puts you in a better position when you're competing against the other park projects. Without it, you kind of get shuffled to the bottom of the list, and these lists are pretty long. That's the RCO way. The other side of it, of course, is the bond. So if you said we're going to do a park bond, you need to list all the things you're going to improve, courts, plazas, green space, whatever it is. The voters vote on it, you pass the bond. Generally, you just got to comply with those little generic items when you look at a bond. If you pass a bond and then go do something else, that becomes problematic. So that's why it's important to kind of have it as a living document. They may move around, the courts might move over here, they might move over there, it's okay. But as long as you provided a court activity of some kind, and that recreation element is being able to check off, then you're in good shape. It's when you don't have a plan and move forward and all of a sudden money's going different directions, that's usually when these funding agents have a problem. And they find themselves going, oh, what did we do? So from the RCO side, it's really important you have this stepped process. From, if you do a bond, the city council, they got to know what you're wanting to build, otherwise my suspicion is they'll say, don't go out for a bond. I can tell you from experience, that has to happen, it's really important. So, if that helps, I hope that kind of gives a big picture.
No, I appreciate that. So if I'm gathering, this is a generalized idea that we would send to city council. They would see kind of what we're thinking and planning, and then it's open to public comment again, and it's also open to tweaking at that time. Absolutely right. Okay, so I hint some hesitancy from my fellow commissioners on making a motion to approve this rendering to going to city council. Is that a good way to put it? Am I sensing some?
I think my questions were answered. So
Okay, use your microphone, please.
I think my questions were answered sufficiently.
Okay, all right. So do I have a motion to send this up the ladder?
I make a motion to
Can we
send this to
make-
city council.
Sorry, Jay, you talked over somebody. So
I
Commissioner Wu.
apologize.
Okay, just a second, Jay. So Commissioner Wu has put the motion out to move the drawing to the city council. I'm looking for a second.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Now we can discuss.
Okay, when we presented to the city council, early on, it was discussed that it was the Millwood Park spatial planning program, not the master plan. Can it be presented as that, as a living document or a working document, so that they know that there could be some tweaks based on everything that Ken has discussed and what we need to work on, so that they understand it's not cast in stone, and maybe being anal about that. But I think I like the sounds of spatial planning rather than a master plan.
Yeah, absolutely. They can tweak it, or it's going to come back for public comment anyway.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Beasy?
So basically, our plan is to get the generalized public comment, because we went to the park and we got people who attend the farmers market, so those people got input. But there's a lot of people in the community that don't go to the farmers market on a regular basis, and those of them that know that this is happening are kind of waiting for their chance to get to say something. So I think it would need to be stressed to City Council that this is not our final plan. This is just a point that we want to bring them into it, and we are still hoping to get input from the community before we make it official.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
No, I agree with that. This is just, it's an option. They have to have something that they can look at to either say, yes, we like, or what the heck is this?
Yeah.
And so
exactly.
I think we're at their point. I mean, I think this is a great rendering. So, okay.
Can I comment, just to add on that? You're essentially educating the council as to where you're at in the process. That's what you're being asked to do. I will say, through briefing all of last year, Christina strongly emphasized the success of the informal information gathering that you conducted in the process you were going through, but they've not seen up to this point yet. So you're simply in an educational process of this is an initial stage of our planning process, our conceptual process. This is not the final document. Public hearing has not occurred. Change may be subject to public hearing, and ultimately, change could be adopted by the council after public hearing if it's sent it up as well, or it could be sent back for additional hearing by the planning commission. So you're, as Ken knows, I love baseball. You're barely to first base at this point in terms of scoring a run. You're still, as much work as you've done, you're still very much in a very initial stage. But you're going to be rounding second, third, and touching home very, very quickly this year through this process. So,
Thank you, Mr. Worst. Any further discussion? If not, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Non-committal?
There was a weak eye in there.
Okay.
Depending
Okay.
on, as long as the.
Yeah, but it was remote, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So motion passes. Thank you for your presentation. It was very great.
Yes, it was.
All right, next item of action brings us to any public remarks. Do we have anybody in the crowd tonight that'd like to talk to the planning commission? Seeing none, let's move to number 7, staff report.
Thank you. I have a few things for you. I apologize for the screens. They were adjusted this week, and I didn't realize I would be persona non grata. I want to talk to you about the possibility of the members of this commission coming to a city council meeting likely in March to chat with the council, give them an update. Obviously, they will have the update on this project in February, but we've talked in the past that I think it's important that we stay in contact with our city council with what we're doing. And so I am proposing that we do that at their March meeting, and I will be following up with you in February about that, but keep that in mind.
Date?
Fourteenth. March.
A Tuesday.
Secondly, I would like to inform you about a public meeting that the Beautification and Tree Board is having here in City Council chambers on February 7th at 6 p.m. As you're probably aware, last year the Beautification Board received a grant from the Department of Natural Resources to conduct a tree inventory, and that was finished at the end of last year. They're having a public meeting now with that consultant to discuss the findings of that inventory and to discuss the creation of an urban canopy management plan. As you all know from sitting on this board, it is difficult at best to get folks to attend those public meetings. So I would encourage you all, if you're able, to come by and also to tell your friends and neighbors in the city or anyone who might be interested in urban forestry to please come out to that meeting on the 7th. I want to make you aware of some staffing changes here at City Hall. You may have read in your newsletter that Paul has announced his retirement. He will be leaving the city after 39 years at the end of March. And so a bit of a restructuring has occurred or will be occurring with his departure, and Lisa will be moving downstairs to operate as a new admin for finance and public works. I have interviewed and hired a new administrative assistant for the front desk, and she will be the one who will be taking over for Lisa in these meetings. She starts on February 1st, and so my plan at this time is to have both Lisa and Denise, is her name, attend your February meeting so that Lisa can show her the ropes and get her comfortable with the program that she uses for minutes and agendas. And then Lisa will be abandoning us.
That's a nice way to put it.
Quitter.
That's exactly how it worked, yeah.
Lisa will be leaving us all alone. I wanted to ask, you all, we'll be wrapping up this park project, and then I've spoken with the mayor about some things coming up. We won't have another big project like this through the summer. So I wanted to talk with you all about the farmers market and how you felt about that. Is that something that you would like to do through this summer? Have the booth just as more of a community outreach rather than a subject-specific display? We would still, we have plenty of promotional items that we can distribute, but I wanted to know if that was something that you enjoyed and wanted to continue with, or if you just wanted to stick to your regular meetings through the summer. Something also we can think about, maybe you can think about over the next month, and we can talk about next month, maybe.
Let's do that.
Okay.
I think I see value in it, just FYI.
I also think that we've seen great value in it, and I will be there anyway. So I will be there, the Historic Preservation Commission will be there. And since I plan to be there anyway, maybe you don't do all three, maybe you do a couple, or we could, we could talk about it a little bit more. So just give that some thought over the next month, and we can chat about it. Are you going to blast me with a public meeting thing?
Not blast you. Just as you think about the discussion points, be mindful of the, and Mr. Rickard is aware after spending a tedious hour with me before the meeting on open government, because you're not meeting in this location, that is a special meeting. And so we just got to be mindful of the notice requirements that would go into that. We can certainly, if there's topics to discuss, with the park, the park plan development, you had a pretty clear topic. But the idea of just kind of a general free-for-all discussion, we'll just want to be careful on how we note that up for the special meeting notice. And there are ways to do it, but having identified topics is probably the most helpful to guide your meeting. It's your meeting, right? So you want to be able to guide that too. So I didn't blast you. I'm not abandoning you.
Please shut your mic off. Yeah. And I think, maybe at our February meeting, I can flesh out a little bit more clear the topics that we will be looking at going forward. And then maybe having discussed those, we can nail down some plans for the farmers market. I have one more thing, but before that, I just want to remind you that Lisa has decided to leave us. I'm going to ask a favor now. My son's 16th birthday happens to be the night of our next meeting, and I wouldn't normally ask this of you, but 16 is sort of big. I was wondering about the possibility of rescheduling our February meeting to February 15th, if that would be acceptable to you all. If it's not the end of the world, but if that is something that you could accommodate, I would sure appreciate it. It'll be Lisa's last meeting with us.
I'll be out of town.
Yeah, you said the 15th?
Mm-hmm.
Works for me.
I could join on the phone like Jay.
Okay.
I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I don't see a problem.
Okay.
I mean, we'll make it work.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I can answer any questions you have about when and how Lisa will be moving her office downstairs, if you need.
After this conversation, I expect as soon as possible.
Any questions for Christina? Mr. Commissioner Rickard?
Do you need to?
Do we know what the status is for replacing Paul?
Yes, so Paul's job is being divided into streets and construction and utilities. And Matt Erdahl, who's been with the city for, I don't know how many, 20 years, he will be taking over for Paul as the utilities supervisor, and he will be running that program. And Kyle Shiwi, who is also currently a Public Works employee, will be taking over the streets and construction portion. And then we have 2 other maintenance worker twos who work with those guys. So Paul is being replaced by 2 individuals. And we brought on another Public Works employee late last year to kind of backfill Paul's position. So there's quite a bit of shifting going around, and there's sure to be some growing pains and steep learning curve for those guys, but that is the plan right now. I also should say that a retirement celebration is planned for Paul on the afternoon of May 22nd at the Millwood Masonic Temple in their lower level there in their event space. And so that'll be starting at around 2 in the afternoon, and it's just an open house. Come by and say bye and thank you to Paul. So I would encourage you all to come out to that. I don't think it's a surprise. I believe it's Wednesday, March 22nd. Is that a Wednesday? Yeah.
March 22nd is the event?
Yes.
Okay. I thought
And
you said
I
that.
will be having an invitation that will go out, so that'll tell you specific times, but if you can, kind of plan on that.
Do you think you could send out an email with a list of those dates that we talked about tonight as a reminder?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Christina? Okay, thank you for that. So we'll move to commissioner comments. I have something I just want to bring up. I'm not sure if it's really a comment. I guess I just want to see if it might be a possibility from the Public Works Department. Due to our fall being...
Can I stop you right there?
Absolutely.
The Public Works Department has determined that the week of February 27th through March 3rd, they will be doing one pass through the city for leaf pickup.
Dates again on that?
February 27th through the 3rd. A notice will be going out in the February building so that everyone can be prepared for that. Again, it will be a one-time only pass through the city during that week. And weather dependent, yes, weather dependent, but that is the plan right now.
Great.
You have no idea how happy you've made me.
Me too.
I do what I can.
Thank you.
Lisa's
And,
leaving us.
Way to go, Christina.
Any other commissioner comments? Thank you for that. Commissioner Wu?
I would just like to, I'm sorry.
Jay, wait to be recognized, please. Commissioner Wu, did you have something?
I was just going to say congratulations on your new job, despite what Christina says.
I haven't determined yet if it's promotion or demotion. I am not sure.
Well, hopefully it came with more money. So, Commissioner Olator?
I apologize for jumping in there. I'm sitting here looking at a blank screen on my phone. It's kind of hard to get, be paying attention. I wanted to say the same thing that was just mentioned, Savannah mentioned. Congratulations to Lisa. We'll still see her around there, just in a different capacity. So, way to go.
Anybody else? Okay, congratulations. But it should come with more money. FYI, if you need me to negotiate. Okay, anytime you move, don't make it a lateral move.
You're gonna have to go up and down the stairs.
She's leaving you, just as a reminder.
Yeah.
All right, well, we did set the next meeting for February 15th. Is that correct? So make sure you make a change of that and make note of it. With that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
I'll make,
Okay,
and I'll second that.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right.
Okay, great, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.